Testing, testing. Hello, hello. I'm going to be releasing one video per day for the next 3 days as we run our Black Friday sale from the bundle. So here's day one. I'm going to be dropping one of the Pure Mobility classes, and this is a 13-minute module inside of Pure Mobility. The course. And so again, this is one of the courses in the Black Friday bundle. You can click the link down in the description if you want to check out the page and get a massive discount. It's like 85% off or something ridiculous right now. So here is iliacus. So if you're not sure what iliacus is, it's essentially one of your hip flexors. So if you palpate your hip bones, the front of your hip bones, and you scoot your fingers in just slightly, that little muscle there, it's definitely correlated with the psoas, but it's can be really bound if you tend to sit for long periods of time in your job, or you tend to do a lot of squats, for example. That little psoas or iliacus that's connected to the psoas will be pretty tight. And so if you want to unlock your quads, start with rolling out your iliacus. Here's the video. Enjoy. This video tutorial is for iliacus technique. This video tutorial goes through iliacus release techniques using the rad rounds. So you might not even know where your iliacus is. That is a hip flexor. It's a deep hip flexor. So you can take your hands on your hip bones and then just move inward just a little bit here and start to palpate that tissue there. So you can do little circles. This is going to be where we apply the rad round later on, but just get familiar with that zone because it definitely impacts your ability to come into hip extension, which is related to the hip flexors here. So what you can expect from this tutorial will be priming the hip flexors initially. We'll be going through our self-myofascial release techniques using the rad round, and we'll be reinforcing it with 2 different activation drills or stretches. So the first thing in priming, go ahead and set yourself up in a shin box. If you've never done a shin box before, I highly, highly recommend. This is excellent for increasing your hip mobility. So in a shin box, you're going to be bending your legs so that your shins basically make a 90-degree angle. So let's increase this angle here and increase this angle here. So from up above, if we were to kind of zoom in here, you'll basically see that 90-90. So we'll begin with shin box hip extension. Modified variation, if you're not able to get up into that position, if this causes you pain, what you can do is start pressing your hip forward. So then just press this hip forward and then press it down. So this might be your modification today, is just starting to prime that area. If you'd like to progress and go further, go ahead and lift up onto your front shin. Use the help of your hands if you need to at first. And eventually bring your hands to prayer and hold. Press your hips forward, engaging your glutes and posterior chain, and then create a hip hinge and slowly lower down. So you should have control the entire way down here. Again, press your hips forward, come to full hip extension as if you're swinging or lifting a weight. Good, and then slowly lower down. The key is really getting that fascial tension, pushing all the way in. Good. You can stay here, or you can advance this and progress it into shin box with tripod. Place the right hand back. Glide the hips up, come into your shin box hip extension plus a tripod reach. And again, we're looking for that vertical line in the shoulders. You can go vertical or overhead, and you're going to feel a stretch in your opposing hip flexor right around the iliacus area. Good. Again, drive up, full hip extension. Keep that fascial tension, point both toes. The tendency is the feet want to come into flexion, but really stretch that front line of the foot. Good, one more. Excellent. And shin box switch, come on over to the other side. If you're on a wooden floor, it's nice to keep your front knee on the mat to protect that surface. All right, so beginning with just grounding. So let's just have that hip move in and out. So you're just kind of lubricating your femur in that ball and socket joint and just applying that downward pressure to heat the joint and prepare it for the action. If you'd like to progress, bring the hands to prayer or use the help of your hands to tip forward and press yourself up. Find full hip extension here. Hip hinge and keep your core engaged as you come down. The tendency for people that are new to this mobility drill is people want to crash down because there's a lack of stability in their deep rotators. So the trick is, if you want to achieve stability, create torque. So as you're coming up, imagine squeezing your knees together and tearing the mat apart between your knees. And this, as you go down, this will give you more support. When you're ready, place the opposite hand back. Find your hip extension. Press the palm straight up. Go vertical. Engage the glutes. Drop it down. And again. Pre-recruit the lats of the back arm. Stretch up and overhead. And down. Last one. Excellent. So now that you've awakened that area that you'll be rolling, you can place your green rad round under either hip. Actually, let's start with the hip that's closest to the front. So pick a side on your belly. And she'll be placing the rad round. Feel free to use the blue if you want a little bit more of a dense round. Placing it in medially relative to your ASIS bones. That protruding bony landmark here, you're moving it in here. And it's pretty much right at where the crease of your underwear drawers would be. And Rachel, go ahead and just rest your forehead on your hands, stacking them and making a little pillow. And the first objective is establishing breath. Inhaling through the nose and exhaling. If you need to readjust your round to make sure that you're affecting an area that feels bound, please do so now and move it to a place that feels adhered. And another variation is you can actually use your block here, your rad block, and you can place your hip on top of the block as well. So I'll demonstrate that on the other side, but for now, we can start here. So begin with tail wag. So this is a shearing action, shearing force. So just tilt your hips to the right and left. And again, up above, it's just looking like you're moving one hip higher up and continuing to alternate sides. Again, staying with the breath, staying in your parasympathetic. And then you can bring that into pelvic tilts. So scooping the pubic bone forward and back. And I really like to combine these actions. So once I've established forward and back, side to side, try to put it into a circle. So you're kind of massaging your entire pelvic girdle in a circular pattern. This is great for activation of those deep inner core muscles, pelvic floor, TVA. And once you've done a few in each direction, go ahead and switch directions. We'll move into a little bit more isolation of the action. So you can bend your right leg to a 90-degree angle, keeping your knee on the ground. And then bring your leg in towards the midline here, finding which is known as external rotation, all the way out. And then internal rotation, allow your foot to go to the opposite side. And continue to move both internally and externally, maintaining uniform pressure throughout on the rad round. If you wanted to make this into a circular pattern, you can move in medially, extend the leg, and then loop it around and basically draw a circle on the floor. So I'll take you through. So it's here, if that feels good to you. Keeping that fascial tension throughout. And then the last little piece, you have the option to bend your heel maximally towards your glute. And if you have the flexibility, you can lift yourself up and reach your right hand back and capture the ankle at the thickest part of the ankle. And kick into your hand here. Looking forward and elevate the knee just slightly off the ground. Be gentle here. This can always be a little tender at first, and over time, hopefully it starts to open up for you. Very good. And release. And slowly come up. And since we just rolled the right side leg, you're going to extend your right leg and bend your opposite leg. So the final activation drill is called Dancer's Bridge from Shin Box. So from here, perfect angle, place one hand back, your right hand back, behind your right hip a little bit farther, and then lift your hips up and come into your shin box. Good. Actually, go ahead and come down, switch sides, so opposite hand back. Yes, there we go. Lift up. Good. Stretch straight up vertically, and then eventually reach up and back here. So ideally, you want this to be in a perfectly straight line. Go ahead and come down. And if you need to reposition your leg, go ahead and just move that leg in medially and make sure that this hand is in line with the shoulder. So back here. Good. And press up. There we go. Awesome. So we're looking for that perfectly straight line, stretching evenly throughout the tissues. Excellent. All right. And moving back to the other side. So grab your round and we'll be performing that same self-myofascial release technique on the iliacus. Now, these drills are excellent for anyone that sits for long periods of time. If you've had any issues in that specific area with chronic hip flexor tightness. If you have an excessive anterior or posterior pelvic tilt, this might help to loosen that up. So begin with your tail wag, just moving side to side. Take your time, establishing the breath throughout. And the tendency here, when you're first beginning this, is your body will find the easiest way to perform the action. So oftentimes you'll come up into a little bit of hip flexion. The objective is to keep a straight line from your trunk relative to your quad so that you can apply that even amount of pressure on the iliacus. And then pelvic tilts forward and back. Take your time, breathing throughout. And this can be a really tender area, so just make sure you're using your due diligence and always listening in for that pain scale, never exceeding a 4 on a pain scale of 1 to 10 or discomfort level. Excellent. And then bend your left leg. And then start to windshield wiper in and out. And notice, external rotation tends to be really easy for people because we're already prone to be in external rotation. Internal rotation tends to be limited. So doing this iliacus release technique drill will really help you start to restore that mobility in internal rotation and help you access your full range of motion in your hips. You can turn that into circles, just bending and extending the leg, working on your proprioceptive feedback of understanding and remembering where your body is in space without having to look. Switch directions. Beautiful. And then bend your back leg, prop yourself up, and reach back with your left hand. You can just hold here by bringing your heel towards your glute. You have the option to lift your back knee off the ground, lift your forearm up a little bit too. Good. And just finding that quad stretch, applying that downward pressure into the rad round. And continue to kick, and then release. And press yourself back to child's pose, and we'll come into a kneeling position with the left leg long. Perfect. All right, so moving into our shin box to dancer's bridge. So with left leg long, perfect form. Place your opposite hand back. Pick a hand, it's gonna be actually your other hand. Good. Go ahead, drive up. Perfect. And we're looking for thoracic rotation first. Vertical line here. Good. And then come down. Switch hands. All right, so it's the right hand back. She got it right. There we go. Awesome. Good. And try one more time. Just drive up from the right hand with the left leg long. Perfect. And really important that you want to point the toes. So really getting that full fascial tension through the front of the feet. And come down. And then, Rachel, go ahead and come to downward facing dog. And I'd like to demonstrate just one other activation drill that you can use that's slightly more dynamic and might really transition into your mobility practice. So you can move into the opposite leg that you just stretched. So let's go into the right leg here. So from downward facing dog, we're coming into three-legged dog with the open hip, and it's usually referred to as scorpion. So inhale, reach up. And keep stacking your right hip on top of left maximally, and then bend your top leg. So really emphasizing bringing the heel towards the glute, finding that hamstring stretch and hold. Continue to drive the opposite heel down and breathe. This eventually could turn into flipping your dog, coming into dancer's bridge, or it can just be a preparation drill. Good, go ahead and float it down. And try the other side. Inhale, take your left leg up. Point the toe, and really find that external rotation first, and then bend the knee heel towards glute. And you're really using your muscular action here on the posterior chain to bring your heel towards the glute. You can point or flex the foot, either one's fine. Try flexing just for that different variation. That sometimes helps you get that hamstring a little more active. Excellent, and then float the leg down, return to child's pose, and rest. And if at home you have a flip dog in your practice, welcome to flip your dog, finding dancer's bridge. We'll be coaching that later on in our mini sequence. All right, prime those iliacuses, get used to that term, get to know your body. This is highly, highly effective as you start to implement it over time and stay consistent with your mobility practice. All right, so there you have it. That is one of the videos. I did not realize there was a funny little hiccup when they did the cut sign, so that was new to me. But most of the other videos don't have that. So yeah, that is kind of a feel of that course. If you have any questions, everything's going to be listed here. So
click the link in the description and shoot me a comment if you have questions. We'll see you in the Black Friday sale. Oh my gosh. And it's running through Monday. Thanks, everyone.